Hey guys, so can everybody hear me okay? Did a no? All right, great. Thank you, Lisa. All right. So we're here to practice Yin Yoga together. Thank you, Carrie. Still got people showing up here, so we'll give them another second. And today we're doing a sequence that I created, I call the clock. So all the sequences I teach, I created. I don't really teach other people's sequences at this point. Not that there's anything wrong with that. This is not different in that sense. But I have different kinds of sequences. Some of them are very traditional, what I would consider kind of a traditional yin sequence. Others are more out of the box. And if you watch my teacher, Paul Grilley's DVD called Yin Yoga, in that he has a sequence that is one of these kind of out of the box sequences that he calls the infant series. And so right from the beginning, I was introduced to Yin Yoga, that there's a range of practices within Yin Yoga. There's very typical Yin classes, and then there are Yin classes that are sort of outside of the norm. So this is one of those classes. It's a little bit creative, and I do this for many reasons. One is, as students of yoga, we don't want to get too rigid. We don't want to get too stuck in doing things one way. So it's good for us to have to change things up a little bit, to have our expectations challenged. Two, physically, it's good for us to not always do the same thing in the same way all the time. And three, again, it lets us see some of the range that's possible in Yin Yoga. So last week was very typical Yin. Next week will be, but this week we're doing something that's a little bit more creative, out of the box, however you want to think of it. And regardless, it's good for us. So we may like it, we may not like it, but either way, it's going to be good for us. It's still Yin Yoga. So we begin on our back, and you may want to face the opposite direction that you normally face. So normally, if I were laying on my back, I would probably put my head over there. But today I'm going to put my head over here, and hopefully you'll see why in a little bit. Okay, so we're laying on our back, and I may actually turn around just for demoing purposes, but you may want to stay in this position. This can be a little bit of a confusing sequence, so just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so we begin with the cat tail. We're going to take our left leg and bring it up, and then we just drop it over to the right side. Prop our head up on the right hand and elbow, okay? And we take the right leg and we move it back. So hopefully you can see that on the camera there. And then just knee on the right foot. So I'm not facing the camera, but I'm going to stay in this position. Well, actually, no, I'm going to turn, because it'll be better for you to see what's going on in a moment. Okay. So just imagine that the camera just turned, not me, if you will. Okay. So we're here. Now we have all the same options as normal, which is the left leg, which is the leg in front of me, can be straight or bent. It can be closer to my chest or belly or further down away from it. I can have my head propped up on my hand, as I do, on my upper arm, on a block or blanket, or even on the ground. My left shoulder can stay stacked above my right, or I can lay back and take a deeper twist and deeper back bend if my body will let me do that. The main stretch is usually felt at the front of the thigh here, but we are also taking a twist and a back bend here. Okay, so don't be afraid of leaning back and taking advantage of the effect on the spine. This is a sequence I call the clock. So what the clock does is it moves the femur, which is the thigh bone, in a complete rotation. It does each individually. And then it moves the torso also through a complete rotation. So it actually works the torso twice because we have two legs. So each time we do one leg, we do the entire torso. And then as we do the other leg, we do the torso again. So that may not be clear to you if you haven't studied anatomy and you don't really pay attention as we move through the postures. But I'll try and make it as clear as I can as we go through it. This is why some of the transitions might be a little bit awkward. It's because we're trying to stay with the same leg active. So throughout this first side, the class is basically in two halves. And throughout this first half, you're going to be stretching and working your right leg only. So this leg that we're holding on to right now should be our right leg. And we are stretching the front of that thigh right now. And so as we go through this sequence, we're going to be stretching and working that hip joint. Simultaneously, I'm twisting my spine, okay, in one direction. And then later, I'm going to twist it in the opposite direction. Okay, now please listen carefully. You'll take the right leg and straighten it, and then prop yourself up on your elbows. You can have this left leg pointing to the left, but you can also pull it underneath you like this. And then I want to bring my torso up and back pretty much as I can. And this is called a half seal. Okay, so it's like the back bend, seal pose, but half version. Now, I got to emphasize that people often want to do this. Okay, and if you really can't do anything more, that's okay. But you want to do a back bend here. So again, the clock, this sequence, works both the hip and the spine. This is similar to what we did last week, where in the double trouble, we were working the hip and the spine simultaneously. So we're doing that here as well, just in a different way. I think of this sequence as very playful. Again, I had the idea of, hey, you can move the femur bone around like you would move a clock. You can rotate it around. What would that sequence look like? And as you rotate your femur, it tends to affect the spine as well. And over the years, I've discovered certain relationships where the spine and the hip are worked together, you might say, that what you're doing in the hip intensifies or accentuates what you're doing in the spine and vice versa. So that's the case here. The more that I am up and back, the more stretch I get in my hip flexors, the more my leg goes back, the more of a extension in the spine. And that's why doing this is not the same, even though the legs are equal, it's just not going to affect my muscles and joints in the same way. Okay, got just a little over a minute left here. As always, I think you all know, if you have any questions or difficulty, just let me know, and I'm happy to help you with that, okay? All right, so in a moment, we'll be coming out of this, and please don't just jump out of it. Again, if you come out of it completely, you'll probably get turned around and you'll end up on the wrong leg. So just watch me transition, and then you can try it yourself, okay? So we're going to move into what's called a lateral frog. Again, it's the right leg we're interested in. So we'll take the right leg and swing it out to the side and in front of us. So now we're in this position. I am going to turn so that you can see me better, but again, hopefully you will not necessarily need to turn. Okay, so I'm in this position. This is a typical, what's called half frog position. Now I'm going to do something a little atypical for half frog. I'm going to fold over my right leg, and I want to see if I feel stretch in the inside of the right thigh and the outside of the left waist. If not, I stack or roll my left shoulder over my right shoulder. So I'm in this position. This is a lateral half frog pose. Okay? Not the easiest position for some people, myself included. But again, we'll just be here for 3 minutes. We've got, 12 different postures to get through, so we have a little more than usual. And that means we have to cut down the time a little bit. Now, what's unique about this sequence, pretty much in all my sequences, is we don't rebound as often. Now, some yin teachers don't rebound at all. Other yin teachers rebound after every single pose. When I studied with Paul, he said there's no rule. You can rebound once at the end of the class. You can rebound after every posture. There's no rule for rebounding. So in today's class, we have, again, just 2 rebounds. I'll try and give you a nice long rebound at the halfway point, okay? We're halfway through this posture. We're also about halfway through this side. So again, we have 2 sides. So we're about a quarter of the way through our sequence at this point. If you're finding this posture very challenging, I will encourage you with the news that the next posture should be fairly straightforward and easy. Very yin. Some yin postures are more yang, they require a little more effort, and some yin postures are more yin in nature. Again, please just wait to come out of the pose till you see what I do, although this transition should be very simple. We'll come up and simply bring the legs closer together. I will turn again just for the sake of the camera, but I'm just bringing my knees closer together, and then I fold forward and down like so. And I'm stretching back here, the hamstrings, okay? And this is just a half frog, what we call half frog. Nothing fancy or special about this posture. Make sure that your left knee and foot are happy in that position. That can be a challenging position for some folks, but usually sitting up on a block or a folded blanket will do the trick. Just like in half butterfly, feel free to use support. A couple blocks under your forearms, a block under your forehead, sitting on a block. These are all options for you. And if this really bothers your knee or foot, you could do half butterfly here. But again, part of the fun part of this sequence is the way that the femur and the leg is moved in a very consistent way. So when you take that foot and you move it to another position, we sort of lose that consistency, and that's okay. Again, it's just playful. It's fun to work with the body shapes. At least for me, it is. It's fun to say, ooh, then we could move this one joint in this way, and then we're in a different pose, and then we can move it this way and we're in a different pose. And that's essentially what we're doing. All right, I've got about 1.5 minutes left here, a little bit more than that. Okay, in a few seconds, we're going to transition again. And again, this can be a slightly awkward transition. So watch me first, and then you can try it. So again, it's this leg, the leg that is straight, that is our active leg. To do the next posture, we will need to bend this leg, and then we'll have to bring the not active leg behind us, okay? And this is called sleeping swan. So I take the front leg and I bend it like so. Take the back leg, I bring it behind me, and then I come down like this. Now, we have one more thing that we need to do. Again, today's sequence affects both the hips and the spine simultaneously. So if I'm just here, if you look at my spine, nothing is happening with my spine at all. I'm just stretching out here, which is good. That's a good stretch. It's beneficial. And again, this is much more comfortable. But what I would like to do today is add a twist, literally. So I try and bring my right shoulder to the ground and press my hands into one another. And I add a twist to the pose, okay? Now, if my hip rolls too far over, then I'm not going to get the twist. And notice that I'm twisting to the right, twisting toward the active leg. Now, what this does for me, not only does it begin to affect my spine, but it enhances and intensifies the stretch in my glutes. Now, I'm not saying your experience will be the same. It may not be the same. But just give it a shot and see what happens. Let's see, somebody left me a comment here. Yeah, left shoulder to the ground, Jessica. And so you're twisting to the right toward that bent leg, okay? And you may not be able to get the shoulder down. So some people will put a block under the shoulder, that's fine. And you just may not be able to do this. Some people have a lot of tension in their torso, and it just doesn't allow them to twist very easily. So, you know, give it a shot, try it. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You can just do this. And this is what we normally do. Let's see here. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so left shoulder to the ground. And we're twisting to the right, okay? Now again, you could put something under the hips to help support the hips so that you don't roll off to one side. Like sometimes I see people doing it almost like this. It's not quite right because you're probably not going to feel the stretch here anymore, all right? Got just 1 minute left. This is our twisted swan is the name of this posture. So it's like sleeping swan with a twist. Now our next posture is our last one on this side. And it is a very yin posture, very relaxing, very easy. So this is our last of these sort of more challenging yin poses on this side, okay? Okay, so from here, we just roll onto our back. You could go either way. You'll end up on your back either way. And we take the banana pose. So I move my hips over to the right edge of my mat. I take my left leg to the left, cross the right ankle over the left ankle. All right, I reach up, grab my right wrist with my left hand, and then I pull over. And I'm looking for a stretch here, which is my right waist. Now, if I feel it, great, you just stay there. If I don't feel it, then I wiggle or move myself over to the left, upper body. Okay, I can move my legs over more if I want to. Now, the thing that I see in this posture is sometimes people will roll onto their side. So this is not correct. And the reason it's not correct is you're not going to stretch your waist in that position. So while you don't have to have your right hip touching the ground, it needs to be toward the ground. Okay, you don't want your right hip stacked over your left hip. It's not a twist. All right. Again, if there are any questions, just let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll be here for another couple of minutes, stretching our waist and stretching the outside of the hip. If you can see my right leg has been brought into what's called adduction, which is pulled across the midline of my body. So my right leg is being pulled to the left, and that's exactly what I want to do. And as I mentioned earlier, we just worked the right leg over and over and over and over again. And what we'll do in a moment is unwind, and we'll take a little bit of time just to feel that right leg. Now the torso we've worked, again, sort of in a circular fashion. But the leg we have worked in a circular fashion, but just one leg. So the torso we might feel relatively balanced because we've twisted in both directions. We've stretched the side on both sides. We've gone backwards, we've gone forwards. But in the leg, we haven't really done much this leg. We've just basically kept the left leg out of the way and we've stretched the right leg exclusively. All right, let's take a break. We unwind onto our back and we rebound, coming into what we call a pentacle pose. Stilling the body, closing the eyes. Take a moment to feel the right leg versus the left leg. For me, the right leg feels more sensitive. If I take a deep breath, it's almost like it feels like the breath is coming through my right leg more than it comes through my left leg. If I were to describe my legs visually, then my right leg feels lighter, brighter. My left leg, by comparison, feels or seems duller. Now, again, your experience might be different, and that's okay. In yoga, we always want to notice what our experience is. We don't necessarily want to try and pretend that we're having someone else's experience. I'm just sharing with you what I feel. All right, before we continue, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. And we can make some circles with our knees. We can rock side to side or forward and back. You might feel a little cattywampus, a little unbalanced because we worked one leg and not the other, but we'll do the other side now. Okay? All right. So before we continue, let's hinge, hands into the hips, extend the legs. If there's any pain in your back, you're going to bend your knees till that pain goes away. Otherwise, the legs are straight. We'll lift the head and neck, take a nice deep breath, and exhale as you lower the legs toward the ground. Inhale and exhale. Come onto your back. Good. So we're going to take cattail in the opposite direction. Let's take the right leg up and we drop it over to the left this time. Propping the head up on the hand or the upper arm, whichever works is fine. Taking the bottom leg and moving it back away from the top leg. And then bending that knee and grabbing hold of the foot. Okay. And again, we are stretching now the front of the left thigh, the quads. Again, this is the first of 2 twists for the torso. So the more that I lay my right shoulder back, the deeper the twist goes. But you can see I have a relatively limited range of motion in my torso. I think this is somewhat common for men. I see a lot of men who also are the same way when compared to your average woman. Now, this isn't to say that if you're a woman that you necessarily can lay all the way back, or that if you're a man that you can't. I'm just generalizing here. A little over a minute left. Okay, so again, I'm going to caution you to pay attention as we transition to the next posture. I had a student who was doing this with me yesterday, and she kept switching to the wrong leg. So it's very easy to do when we're not paying attention. Okay, so it's the left leg that's active. The left leg, I'm simply going to straighten that leg. I'm going to leave it behind me. And then I take my right leg. I can either leave it where it is, so I can do the pose like this if that's preferable, or I can pull the knee to face forward more like this. Okay, and this is called a half seal pose. It's a back bend. It's a hip flexor stretch. Okay, so I'm going to bring my leg out to the side a little bit. That makes me feel a little bit more today for whatever reason. So it just feels a little more intense in a good way. Again, if you have props at home, you could be propping yourself up. If your wrists ever hurt, one modification looks like this. You use your fists instead of having your wrists at an angle. If you look at gorillas who walk on all fours a lot of the time, they walk on their knuckles like this. This is a very stable position for the wrist joint. This is a good idea also if you ever hurt your wrists. If you're a vinyasa practitioner and you hurt your wrist and you want to keep practicing, this is a very good position for the push-up. For any kind of chaturanga or anything like that, you can put your knuckles down, and that's a very stable position for the wrist. It puts very little stress on the wrist, whereas this places quite a bit of stress on the wrist. It's not to say that our body can't adapt. It can. And if we take our time and we practice sanely, we don't do anything too crazy, overdo anything, then our wrists will get stronger with time and they will be able to handle that kind of stress. But if we rush into it, or, sometimes we just tweak things. There's a tension, again, when we exercise, even in yoga. If I do too little, then my body is degenerating, what's called degenerating. It's getting just weaker on its own, just because I'm not using it. And then if I practice too much, I greatly increase my risk of injury. But even when I practice a little bit, I still have increased my risk of certain kinds of and when I don't practice, I increase my risk of other types of problems, maybe like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, depression, anxiety, insomnia. So, I wish I could say if you practice yoga, it's just all rainbow and light and there's no risks involved and everything is just glorious. But that's just not true. There are risks in not doing yoga, and there are risks that come with doing yoga as well. They're just different. Okay, so we're going to transition. Again, this is one of those slightly awkward transitions. We're going to try and take that back leg and swing it all the way around so we can stretch it. Okay, so I swing it around. And again, I'll just turn to face the camera. But you don't need to do that if you have space. And then we fold over the leg sideways like this, like so. I am trying to stretch inside here, the inside of my left thigh. These are called adductors. And then also out here in my waist. Those are called the obliques. About halfway through the pose. Okay, this should be probably the easiest transition and one of the easiest poses. We just bring the knees closer and fold over the straight leg. And this is a pretty straight ahead half frog. And we're doing it today as a hamstring stretch. So the back of the left thigh is the area that we are targeting. We're also, again, stretching the back of the spine gently. So that's true of every posture in today's class. We are affecting both the spine and the hips simultaneously. About a minute left. Okay, now we transition. Again, this is probably one of the more awkward or confusing transitions. to the twisted swan. So the front leg is the active leg. I'm just going to bend that knee, creating what's called external rotation. And I take this leg and I just send it behind me. Okay, so bring it back behind me like so. And then you can start by propping yourself up like so. But we want to add the twist. So once my hips sort of settle into the position, and again, I could put something under here if I wanted to stabilize the hips more. You know, a blanket would probably be a good choice, but a block could work as well. And then I take my right shoulder to the ground, palm up, and I place my left palm onto my right palm. Now you can keep the palm down, but what I was doing on the other side is I was actually pushing the palms into one another and pressing my right elbow into the ground, just taking it a little bit further, but that might be too much for you. So, you know, feel it out. Now, when I teach this live, I can't see any of you, obviously, but when I teach this live, I often see students not even bothering to do the twist. And that's okay. I'm not going to force anyone to do it. And obviously, I can't when we're online like this. But even live, when I'm there in person, I don't force anyone to do it. It's your call, really, but I will encourage. I'm going to encourage you to make the effort, even if it's awkward and uncomfortable. As I said, next week we'll be doing just straight ahead, you know, boring yin. We're not going to do anything interesting or fancy. We're just going to do spine series straight up. Doesn't get any more vanilla than that. And I love vanilla. I'm not saying vanilla is bad. Okay, I love that sequence. I created it. It's one of my favorite yin sequences. It's very yin. My point is that both are beneficial for us. Vanilla is good, and something that is very different and awkward and challenging is also good. And this is why I teach both. And from one week to the next, we might do something that's, again, more straightforward and easy, comfortable. And then another week, we might do something more playful, creative, adventurous, different, awkward. And so it's called yoga practice. And we could ask, what is it a practice for? There really isn't a yoga performance, right? If I practice the piano, eventually I'll give a performance. But yoga, what are we practicing for? There's not a yoga performance. What we're practicing for is life. So life doesn't always bring us what's comfortable, easy, what we expect. And the more flexible we can be, not just physically in our yoga practice, but mentally and emotionally, the more that we can learn to roll with the punches, to expect the unexpected, then the better it's preparing us for our life. All right, let's roll back onto our back. And this is one reason why I'm not a huge fan of set sequence classes. Again, I'm not trying to criticize anybody or tell anyone what they should do. I think there's a place for them. But I know some yogis that get almost into an addictive relationship with certain sequenced classes. And it's like they can't do any other kind of yoga. They just go to this one class. It's always the same. And they get really kind of very narrowly focused on getting better at this one very narrow thing. And again, there might be a time and a place for that, but for most people, it's not a good idea to get stuck in that. It's much better to do different types of yoga classes and to vary the classes from one week to the next. Okay, banana pose. So we're going to move over to the left side of our mat. Taking the right leg to the right. How much just sort of depends on your body. We cross the left over the right, left ankle over the right. Reach up, grabbing the left wrist with the right hand.
And again, that might be enough. Pulling over might be enough. Or if you're like me, you'll actually need to wiggle over. Okay. Now, again, my left hip is not actually touching the ground, but it is near the ground. I'm not rolling onto my right hip, right? And the stretch is here and down into here. All right, let's unwind back onto our back. And we'll just relax for a few moments there, feeling that rebound. Again, one key to rebounding properly or effectively is not to have any expectation, not to even expect to feel good or comfortable or to be enjoying the experience. Very interesting things happen when we let go of our sort of knee-jerk constant effort and desire to control how we feel, to push ourselves in one direction, right? I want to feel good, so we're always pushing in that direction. Well, what traditions like yoga and Buddhism teach us is that some very rich experiences are to be had when we stop that. It may not seem like there's any benefit to doing that, right? That's why most of us don't try it unless we're encouraged to do so. And I will say that at first, it may not make any sense. But over time, we hopefully begin to realize the benefit of that surrender. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze, shake it out with a little bit of movement. You can rock side to side, make circles with your knees. Call this the leg cradle. And then we'll relax with a little bit of guided meditation, yoga nidra, for the next few minutes.
So make yourself very, very comfortable, relaxing on your back. Feel free to use props under your knees to cover yourself with a blanket. And then for the next few minutes, we'd like to set the intention to allow our body to remain still. Additionally, you want to set the intention to remain alert or to remain awake, to remain present and not actually fall asleep. This practice, again, is called Yoga Nidra. It can be translated as sleep meditation. Once you've made yourself very comfortable, close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in. As you exhale, let out a sigh. And again, take a nice full breath in and exhale completely. Good. Now just let your breath be completely natural. Follow the breath by tracing the sensations that are created by breathing. These sensations might be at the nostrils, inside of the nasal cavity. You might feel tingling. In the throat. In the chest. And in the belly. You might feel a difference in temperature on the inhalation versus the exhalation. Letting go of any expectation of what the breath would feel like. Simply notice what it does feel like. Now, keeping your body perfectly still, imagine that your whole body is the color blue. From the tips of your toes and fingers all the way to the top of your head, your whole body is solid blue. Notice what that feels like. And now gradually begin to feel your body is changing color. Starting with your toes, the toes shift from a blue color to red. And now both feet shift from blue to red. The ankles, the lower part of the leg, the knees, the thighs, the pelvis, buttocks,
abdomen, back, the chest, and shoulder blades. The fingers, palms, forearms, elbows, upper arms, and shoulders. The neck, and the head. Your whole body is now red, solid red color. Notice how this feels. Let's return awareness now to our breathing. Gradually begin to breathing. Begin to move your body. Stretch and wake yourself up. I want to thank you all for joining me today for practice. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, a little bit off the beaten path. Next week, we'll be doing something a lot more standard. Again, spine series doesn't get much more yin than that. So I hope you'll join me for that. If you have any questions or if there's any way I can help support you at this time, please reach out. Let me know. I'm available to you. Otherwise, I'll hope to see you at 4:45 next Wednesday for Vinyasa or Yin Yoga at 6. Namaste, everyone. Thank you.